Okay, I'll call this meeting to order, and before we get started, let me go ahead and make this announcement. This board meeting is being live streamed for the convenience of the public at www.okaloosaschools.com. The public may participate in the public comment portions of the meeting by either personal attendance or by calling the school board meeting public participation phone line. A separate seating area has been set aside for the press and public who are in attendance at the meeting in accordance with social distancing guidelines as provided for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. If calling into the meeting, you should call 850-833-3100. The phone lines will be operational beginning at 6 p.m. on the night of the board meeting, and callers will be transferred into the board meeting during the public comment portion and/or public hearing portion of the meeting only, in the order in which the calls are received. If you are calling into the meeting to make public comment, please be patient as there may be a wait time while being transferred into the meeting. And tonight, we will do in-person public comment first, and then we'll go to the phones after that. And just a reminder that tonight will be the last night that we will be doing call-in. Next meeting, if you would like to speak, you would have to be in person, and we will have everything set up in accordance to the CDC guidelines. I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. So, all right, with that being said, we'll go down to approval of agenda. Item 2.1, changes to the agenda and approval of agenda. I need a motion to approve, please.
So moved, Chairman.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. So we have no recognitions, no visitors, no administrative personnel appointments, and we are at Section 6, Public Comment. 6.1, members of the public desiring to address the school board, Form MIS 5241, public input and/or discussion of agenda items. And we do have one blue card. And Mr. Perillo, if you would please come to the front. Good evening, sir.
How are y'all?
You know the routine. If you would please say your name and address for the record, and you'll have 4 minutes. Mr. McInnes will let you know when your time's expired.
Edward Perillo, live at 119 Mooney Road, Fulham Beach. Both of my boys, 9 and 8, they go to Kenwood Elementary. The other day, Tuesday, October 13th, there was an issue with a leak. The principal that's there, well, I won't mention the names. Yeah. She, the maintenance people for the school district called her on the radio and said, "We have a leak. We need to speak to you." She was in a MTSS meeting and responded, "I'm in a meeting. I can't be bothered with a leak at this time. It'll have to wait." Therefore, more damage was done within that school, which ultimately cost the school district, taxpayers, thousands and thousands of dollars. Then the school went without water for 3 hours. So every time I bring my kids to school, before they get out, and I have no problem with it, they take their temperature. But yet for 3 hours, there's no water to wash kids' hands. They go into the lunchroom, eating. They're using the bathroom on top of other kids' waste. And to me, it's unacceptable. For 3 hours. It actually took 2 hours and 20 minutes before they realized that an extension to that school still had water. But for 2 hours and 20 minutes, kids are going to eat lunch. The lunchroom people are serving lunch. I know they wear gloves, but it's still, there's a robocall for everything. But yet, we didn't get a robocall. I found out a week later, and no other parent was notified. The only parents that really knew is if I told them. And if me as a father, I would have picked my kids up, because it's nasty. Kids shouldn't be going to the bathroom on top of other kids' waste. We got this COVID stuff. We got all kind of diseases. It's unacceptable in my eyes. And surely there's something in place. And I talked to Dr. Hale, and he was wonderful speaking with me about all this. So I have no complaints about that. I got a complaint with everything altogether. Kids, I mean, I know all y'all have kids. I know y'all have grandkids. I don't want my kid going to the bathroom on top of other kids' waste, or even the next kid going on top of my kid's waste. It's disgusting. And somebody should have been notified. And it costs the taxpayers thousands and thousands extra dollars because she didn't want to be bothered in this MTSS meeting. And I'm sure there's a policy, I don't know what it is, y'all might be able to tell me or find out, that if there's no water within a school for a certain amount of time, that kids should be released. But if I would have found out that there was no school or no water at my kid's school, I would have picked them up. But I wasn't afforded that opportunity. That's what I'm here to talk about.
Okay. So, real quick, you said you talked to Dr. Hale.
Yes.
Okay. So, with this being said tonight, of course, when people come to the public, we don't know everything that you're going to be talking about.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chambers, I would think this would be something if we could. I don't know if tonight, right now, would be the time to discuss that, but maybe give Mr. Perillo a call and, listen to, address his concerns and maybe report back to us. And,
Absolutely. I'll have staff get with Mr. Perillo and get those answers.
okay. Would that be sufficient for you?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you all know offhand, Mr. Chambers, what's the time limit in the policy? I know there's a policy procedure, and I apologize I didn't look it up. The time limit that water is off, that kids get sent home, because they're not high school kids. These are EBD kids. These are pre-KD kids, kindergarten kids. It's nasty. They don't know how to clean their hands correctly. And I got a robocall on the way here about the weather, which I appreciate all that. But I don't know why I didn't get a robocall about no water for over 3 hours or 3 hours.
Well, respectfully,
Sure.
you're definitely making your point, and that's why I think it would be fair to the superintendent and his staff to be able to get back with you to go over all that.
Okay.
Obviously, at this time, it's, we can't address it the way you want it to be
No,
addressed.
I
but think-
understand.
But you.
And I
but-
gave you copies of the emails that went out about they can go to the bathroom.
Right.
You can't flush.
Right.
So it shows what the principal put out.
Okay. All right. Well, we thank you, Mr. Perillo, for coming. We appreciate your input. Thank
All
you,
right,
sir.
thank
Okay. That's the only blue card I have for public in person. So we're going to check with the phones real quick. Okay, so we'll move on down to section 7, which is committee and staff reports. This was for workshop only. And we are now down to section 8, consent agenda. 8.1, approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So
I'll make-
moved. Sorry.
Okay, so Ms. Ivanchek, I heard you first, and Dr. Kelly, I heard your second. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. So now we'll go down to section 9, superintendent's human resource recommendations. 9.1 and 9.2 are information only, so we'll move down to 9.3, substitute and temporary employee salary schedule. I need a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Dr. White. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.4, out-of-field report for the 2020-2021 school year. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Second, Ms. Vancheck. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.5, employment separations. I need a motion to approve.
Move we approve, Chairman.
Mr. Destin makes a motion, and
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.6, personnel recommendations. I need a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Dr. Kelly makes the motion. Dr. White gets the second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.7, employee transfers. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Then a second.
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.8, reinstatement, reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Ms. Vancheck makes the motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.9, leave without pay. I need a motion to approve.
I'll move that one.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
I'll give that one to Dr. Kelly. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. So nothing was moved from the consent agenda, so now we're at section 11, construction program owners, representatives, business, and 11.1, Mr. Destin.
Thank you, Chairman. As per our discussion at the workshop, all of our tasks that were on the agenda that we passed out from the previous construction meeting are underway. And 11.2 is a task order to repair the roof at the Bay Area office that was damaged by storm.
Okay. So,
And I will move 11.2 if we're there.
all right, yes, we are. So thank you for your report, and we have a motion to approve 11.2. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Second, Ms. Vancheck. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. Section 12, Information Technology Seat Management Contract. 12.1, CACI Task Order Number 2-170, Salto Gate at Okaloosa STEM Academy. I need a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Dr. Kelly makes the motion. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Second, Dr. White. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. So we're at section 13. Mr. McInnes, you're up.
No report tonight.
Okay, thank you, sir. Section 14, Mr. Chambers.
All right, thank you. So, on Thursday, we gave I believe, a thorough update on the quarantine situation. So I'm not going to reiterate that today. I do want to share with the board that we are monitoring Hurricane Zeta, and we are in communication with Mr. Maddox, our safety director for the county. We'll be in contact with him tomorrow as well. And then once we have that communication with him, we would make any decisions relevant for Wednesday, tomorrow, making sure that we communicate with the board, making sure that we communicate with our employees as well as families. So we'll have more of that tomorrow. And then at this time, I'd like Mr. Horton to come up and just give a little bit of an update on some items that would pertain to, if passed, the half-cent sales tax.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers and board members. A couple things I want to say. Some of it might have been said before. This district has had lots of accolades for academic and extracurricular performance, and we know we're one of the only 3 districts to earn an A for the last 6 years in the state of Florida among 67 districts. But as we move around the district and we talk about the issues, the fact-based issues in the school district, accountability and transparency keep popping their heads up, and those are things that are important to people when they're looking to vote for something. So I just wanted to share some factual information, not as well known, but Okaloosa County is designated an academically high-performing district. And so there are components to that. I want to be very careful to go over these components, and it's something that we've been identified as the last several years. I know because Mr. Peterson is responsible for submitting a report back to the state every time we earn this designation. So we just earned it again. The academically high-performing district has 3 components to it. One of them is the district has had to have been an A grade for the last 2 years. So we know that's a piece of Okaloosa County. It's who we are. The second is that we comply with all class size requirements, which are, again, in Florida Constitution in terms of class size. There are a lot of districts out there that don't meet class size for a number of reasons. I'm going to touch on that in just a minute. The third component I think is particularly important, and that is that there are no material weaknesses or instances of material noncompliance noted in the annual financial audit. And I said annual because the school district undergoes annual financial audits. At some point in time, the state auditor general comes in and audits. In the years that the state does not come and audit us, we have an independent CPA firm come in and do a financial audit. So to be an academically high-performing district, you don't not only have to have solid student performance and meet your class size requirements, but also have to have no material non-compliance with respect to independent audits. So that's important, I think. The second piece in terms of the accountability and the transparency is if this surtax were to be approved, it would be there would be a citizens oversight group that would review and report to the public. Of course, the school board approves all of the projects, but the citizens oversight group would be able to sit as an independent group and review and report how the district is progressing with respect to any sales surtax funds and what the district said would be done with them. So that's an important piece for transparency and accountability. The other thing that I would say is that everything that we do in a school district is subject to a competitive bidding process. And so it's not the situation that the district can go and fund a certain project by picking, a cousin-in-law or somebody else that we think we like. We're bound to go through a competitive bidding process on things that we do when they hit a certain threshold. And so this board has the ability and the authority to approve those competitive bids pieces as well. So it's not the situation where there's no oversight or control from that standpoint as well. So I think that's important. The estimated revenue from this sales surtax, we initially said that it could be $23 million a year. There's a group out there, the Chamber Group, that's had another number there. But again, it's all an estimate at this point because we're not really sure what sales tax revenue is going to look like year 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's approximately $230 million or so over 10 years. And it's important that everybody understands that this particular referendum expires automatically in 10 years. So some have asked if it's a forever sales tax, and it certainly is not. The facts are that it has a sunset date, and only if voters approved, if the question were asked again, and if voters approved it, could it be added for longer than the 10 years. So that's an important question that's been asked before. And then you've heard this as well, and I think Ms. Ivanchik has mentioned this, but there are 67 school districts in Florida, and 65 of those school districts have availed themselves of some sort of additional funding outside of what comes from Tallahassee in the capital budget. And by that we mean the half-cent sales tax. We mean an ad valorem or property tax voted by the school board. And we also could mean impact fees. And so those are 3 ways that districts across Florida have sought extra revenue sources to help them with their capital needs. And then there's a 4th, actually, for those small districts that some of them do have those sources, but some don't. And so there is a special facilities construction fee or account, actually, that at the state level, if a very small school district was looking to needed to build a new school and didn't have the tax base to do that, then there's actually funding they can receive directly from the state for that purpose. Okaloosa cannot avail itself of that. So 65 of 67, I think Ms. Ivanchik also mentioned that the 66th county, Duval, has the half-cent question on the ballot in Duval County as well. So, so that's just information. We did take a look back at the spring, you recall, with all of the principals and the school advisory council chairs and facilities and maintenance departments, and look at project lists for each school as a part of a comprehensive capital plan. I will hit some highlights for you just for kind of the thought process. 30 schools were identified at that point in time with some roofing needs at some level. 22 schools were in need of some security upgrades in the form of single point of entry and perimeter security work. 19 schools were identified as having additional classroom space needs, and Mr. Chambers has spoken about that piece in terms of it's not always appropriate potentially to build additional wings onto an existing school. When you've got that in a lot of places, it's more appropriate to look at construction of new schools, and so that's key. 8 schools in need of significant HVAC work, and that means significant, not just the classroom needs an individual air conditioning unit. 13 schools in need of site work, 15 schools in need of classroom and restroom renovation, 15 schools identified as needing cafeteria renovation or expansion or replacement based on, and some of that based on growth in the school. And then, of course, transportation, school buses need to be refreshed on a regular rate. So those are some of the bullet items that were part of those project lists, and those project lists are all available on our website, school by school, for anybody who wants to go take a look at them. And then the last couple of things I want to say is there have been lots of discussion about what can happen if the referendum passes. And we point to the project list. We point to the ability of the school district going forward to use some additional capital funding to help plan for growth and build some schools. We haven't discussed as much what will happen if the referendum doesn't pass. So I think factually we need to look at some things, and one of those being, I've had the experience just in the last couple of years of condemning a couple of portables. You get into those and the floors can't be repaired. They're on average 30 years old. And so as we're using those portables now for students in classroom space, there'll come a time when they no longer can be used for that. There'll come a time when growth occurs at a rate in certain areas where the school district and the school board might be faced with some difficult questions. Number one, do we still comply with class size? I think there are districts, and I know from being in this position for a number of years, this board is steadfast in its commitment to meet class size, because that's an important piece. But at some point down the road, that could be a question that gets asked. There are some districts out there that are investigating double sessions due to overcrowding, and so certain part of the school goes in the morning, another part of the school goes in the afternoon, and in places where that's an elementary school, that would be a challenge. And so I think it's realistic to think about some of the things that may happen down the road, and I'm not talking about next year, but as I look at the condition of the facilities and I look at the portables, that some of these things are things that we have to realistically think about as we go down the road.
Mr. Horton?
Yes, sir.
Will you accept the questions at
Yes,
this
sir.
time? Would you prefer?
No, happy.
I believe there are also some things that the Okaloosa County School District does extra that cost significant resources that other school districts do not do any longer. Might you speak to that just for a moment?
There are a couple off the top of my head. I think one of them is at the high school level, we offer 7 periods of instruction. There's a facility cost to that because we have more teachers to teach more periods, and so it's a greater requirement for classroom space. So for students who want to take a career technical course but also be in the band or chorus, and that's a great selling point for Okaloosa schools, some of that could go by the wayside as we get pinched for space in our buildings.
Well, and in fact, it already has in other school districts.
It has. You're right. We also offer middle school sports, which I think is a great addition to our school district, and it has facility requirements as well. And so as you look at some of the things that down the road, a handful of years, if we're not able to repair and renovate our schools and plan for growth with new schools, these are realistic possibilities. Yes, sir.
So,
Very good.
so a follow-up on some services that we offer that other districts don't. Talk about school buses and how we do secondary and elementary for those that live within 2 miles and a mile and a half.
Yes, sir. We do transport students, obviously in all hazardous walking conditions we do, but elementary students between 1 and 2 miles, we do transport students on those, and that's something that I think the board has long supported, and There's a cost to it, but I think the parents find great benefit in that. And I've talked to a number of them that appreciate that as well.
You know, and I might add that I have relatives that teach in other districts, and in addition to double sessions, some of them go year-round so that they stagger. So someone is in school throughout the whole year.
Yes,
There's
ma'am.
no summer off, so that's another option. You alluded to this, but I think it's important that the public know that we have 120 acres of roof across our 38 campuses. 120 acres of roof that constantly are in need of repair on a rotating basis. There's never a time, I don't think, when some of our roofs aren't under repair. And we have 4.5 million square feet of heated and cool space. So when you start thinking about that kind of repair and that kind of constant attention needed to these facilities, it's really inundating to think about that.
And I'm happy to take more questions. I know the superintendent may have a comment. I want to leave you with one last thought. Going back to the academically high-performing school district, 65 of 67 school districts have the ability, have additional revenue sources available to them. You want to know how many academically high-performing school districts there are? 3 years ago, there were 9 in the state out of 67. 2 years ago, there were 17, so we're still talking about less than 1 out of every 4. This year, we were notified we are, but I don't have the state list yet, so 1 out of something. But it is important to note that a lot of these other school districts that are not academically high-performing, which includes the audit piece, have that additional source of revenue. So I think that the school district, and under the leadership of the school board and the superintendent, have done what needs to be done to put us in a position to where this question could be asked. So.
What was the number last year? 1 out of what?
So it's in arrears. So for 17-18, it was 1 out of 17. For 16-17, it was 1 out of 9. And then the last one that was just released was for the 18-19 school year, because it's based on audit findings and all those things that occur at the end of the year. So that's what I don't have yet for
Yeah.
the last year available, 18-19.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm baffled by how anyone can come to the conclusion that the schools aren't desperately in need of this money, and that it isn't a good thing for both the students but the citizens to have an education system they can be proud of and one that can actually function. We can only stay ahead of the curve so long with the buildings crumbling around us. And so I encourage people, support your schools, support your kids.
Well, and I'll follow up with a comment, and Mr. Perillo pointed out something that happened at Kenwood, but these are things that people don't see. It's what's underground. I mean, out of mind, out of sight sometimes, and until they actually pop up, we don't know, and then that's because of, the piping under there could be as old as the school, so there's a lot more than just what you physically see. There's a lot underneath that's happening too, so.
And Mr. Bryant, could I follow up
Yes, sir.
also in terms of accountability and transparency? Since 2014, this school board has live broadcast every school board meeting. And at this moment, there are folks that are watching this school board meeting, and that was done at a significant, very significant cost savings, Mr. Horton. And of course, your department had a major role in pulling that off. But that's another way that we have tried to be transparent and provide accountability to the citizens, that everything we do, every vote we take, everything we say is on video and it's live, and then it's stored to be looked at later. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
You're
Thank
right.
you.
Yes, sir.
And in addition to that, we have now 2 places on the agenda where the public can come
That's right.
and speak to us on any subject with 2 opportunities. That wasn't there when I first came to this board, and that's one thing I'm very proud of, and I know Lamar is also. The public has the opportunity to come tell us what they think. And if we're doing something they don't like, they have 2 opportunities at every meeting to tell us.
And I'll tell you, if we're forced into a situation where the 7th period goes by the wayside, or middle school sports, we'll be hearing from those folks in those times.
You're right.
Yes, sir. You're correct. Anything else, Mr. Horton?
No, sir.
Oh, I have a couple things.
Go ahead, Ms. Avache.
Okay. So, yeah, speaking of that, so I said that to someone the other day, is that I remember when we had our budget hearings, we weren't turning people away because we were too crowded. We weren't having people speak to us about any concerns about our budget. Okay, so I get aggravated when we have groups saying out in the public that we are not managing our budget correctly. Okay, that is not correct. So if someone wants to say to us, I don't like the way you're spending your money on a certain item, but we didn't have that. So all of that's out there, and it's on our website and all those things. But back to the Duval County piece and the two of us, to be noted that Duval County, they do have it on the ballot, but they're asking for 15 years, where we're asking for 10. In addition, Brevard County is asking again to renew 15 years. And the fact, I was trying to make a fact the other day, I happened to be speaking to someone and said, when you look at the 65 out of 67 counties, I mean, how can that many counties be mismanaging their funds? I mean, come on. It's pretty obvious. So all the state of Florida, we don't know how to manage our money as school boards and as school districts. So, and that's what we've been charged with. So I made that point that, I mean, give me a break. So the other thing is that hearing from individuals that say, well, I don't have students in school anymore and all of that. This is really a community issue. I was very proud to see actually one of my former students, and that's our Sheriff-elect Eric Aiden, put out a statement just today through the School Sense group, speaking about investing in our children, in our community. But I've heard him speak and some others speak about how we have actually lost some businesses, high-tech businesses and others wanting to come to our area. They know we're a good school system, but when they look at our facilities, they don't choose to come here. They're shocked. And so this is about community growth. This is about that. So we're not allowing that to happen. So it does affect everyone, whether you have a child sitting in a classroom or not. So it's everyone that lives in Okaloosa County or works in Okaloosa County or both is going to be affected by what happens here. And I was asked in a situation, so what if it doesn't pass? Well, I don't even know that there can be an answer to that. I mean, my answer, of course, was that we will always educate our students to the best that we can. But to me, there is no way that we cannot pass this. And of course, we will have to do things like take away that 7th period day. And then we do have to take away things that add to the enrichment of students, like maybe music programs or those kinds of things. And that is what enriches a student's education. And you hate to take that away, but we're going to have to. So I hope that the public has gotten the knowledge that they need to see this information. There's had a lot of opportunity, and I just want to commend Michelle Ankers and her group, all of them, for what they've been able to do. They've done a phenomenal job in working with our district and getting the information out for people to understand, what is going on. So thank you for compiling that here, at our last meeting before the final voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fanchek.
Well, Mr. Horton took some of my comments, but I'll just say that as we are 8 days away from election, I think that our 32,000+ students and our 4,500 employees deserve to work in facilities that live up to the level of their performance. And as we've all acknowledged, there's no one in the state, as far as employees, who work harder for the academic success of our students than those that live and work in Okaloosa County schools. Likewise, we have a stellar athletic programs and stellar arts and music programs. So I don't think that there's really any place in the state, as acknowledged by the grades and all the accolades that we get across the state, for a student to have a greater school experience than here in our district. But it does hurt me to the core when I do business in my consulting world. For instance, I was in Escambia County today, and I go across to Santa Rosa County or Walton County, and they have these beautiful, shiny new facilities, but maybe their rankings aren't as good as ours. So it really does hurt my feelings that we see less high-performing areas with better facilities than ours, and I just think that the onus is on us as citizens and as voters to do the right thing for our 32,000 students and our 4,500 employees and our community at large, because you've heard me talk about ECAR before and thanking them, the realtors, for their support of this initiative. But really, they use the tagline that, you know, buy a home here, we have A+ schools. But really, people move here because that's an indicator of a high-quality living condition anywhere. I mean, I have a daughter that lives in Orange County in front of Lake Nona High School and Lake Nona Middle School, beautiful schools. And that was one of the reasons they built there, because the schools and the environment. So people buy a home in areas with schools like ours, with systems like ours. So our facilities should reach and should match the level of opportunity that we provide inside those facilities. And I'll leave the topic with a comment, an old-fashioned comment that my mother used to make. She used to say, I want you to always know, keep up the outside of your home. Keep the lawn looking spectacular, keep it painted, whatever you've got to do, because people don't know what the inside looks like. They judge you by what the outside looks like. Don't have trash on your lawn and all of that. It's the same in our schools. People drive by our facilities and they make a judgment call on what they believe might be going on the inside, but they don't know. So I believe that this is just right that we do this for our people, our communities, our families, our students, and our staff.
And the only thing I would add is I think this is also about vision. And we've talked a lot about what does the next generation of Okaloosa schools look like. And there's no doubt that we need many repairs in our schools, upkeeps in our schools, but also paying attention to the growth that's been occurring here in our school district and being prepared for that as well. And I thought it was important, as Mr. Horton and I were talking, that for today's presentation, that, you know, not only did we talk about, you know, the needs, but also about, you know, what if it does not pass and what that might mean. So I think it's important for the public to know as well. But here's what I also believe. I believe the citizens of Okaloosa County really appreciate the school district. I think the citizens know that the school district is a part of the heartbeat of the school district, and they've always supported our school district. And, you know, we've always talked about, you know, we're not perfect, but we're going to do everything that we can for our students and for our employees. And I just believe that the citizens of this county are going to really look at the needs of this school district. And I do believe that the citizens understand what's at stake and will support.
And just my final comment, Mr. Chambers and board members, is that the key word here is investment. And don't make it about yesterday's, what happened yesterday, years ago. We got to move forward. And yes, you know, accountability is something that we pride ourselves on. And I think it's been stated clearly today that we do our best to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. But we need to look at this as an investment, because there's people out there saying, well, I don't have kids in school and why should I pay that tax? Well, when you were in school, somebody was paying that tax. So I don't know about you, but this generation of children that are coming up, they're the ones that are going to be taking care of me one day, and they're going to, you know, we need to give them the facilities to be able to perform even better than what they are. But we are the Okaloosa County School District, and we will, no matter what, we're still going to provide an A+ education for our children, no matter what the facilities are, because we have the staff that's going to go out there and do it every day, and I believe in our students. They're going to perform at a high level. So,
Thank you, Mr. Horton.
anything else, Mr. Chambers?
That is it.
All right. Well, we'll start with Ms. Ivanchek tonight with school board members' comments.
Okay, yes, all right. Couple of things. First of all, we are at the end of the first 9 weeks, believe it or not. Gosh, seems like we've been doing this for a long time, doesn't it? But I want to wish all those students and teachers well. I know those teachers are working really hard. It's also Red Ribbon Week, where we remind our students that they don't want to go down any kind of route that gets them towards any kind of drugs. And I know the schools have a lot of activities working this week as they look at that. Also, I'd like to recognize one of our fellow school board members tonight. This weekend, Dr. Diane Kelly received a Distinguished Alumnus Award from the University of West Florida. She was one of 4 alumni from the school to receive this award. And of course, it's for her contributions to a career in public education, which she has some 40 years or so in public education. She has numerous titles that she served in our district over these years and did so many different things I admire her for, and I'm sure all of us do. And also her work in our community. Dr. Kelly has served in so many different capacities and continues to do that in a lot of different ways, and not the least of which is the Hope Squad. So this weekend, the University of West Florida Alumni Association recognized her. Typically, they have a big reception, but in this COVID world, it was a virtual celebration, but I got to watch that. So congratulations, and thank you for representing us so well, and certainly such a deserving recognition. So
Thank you, Ms. Ivanchik. I can say that about every person up here. There's not an educator in our district that doesn't deserve that, and certainly you as well. All of us have served in this district well, but thank you for recognizing that. I
And I'm
appreciate
good.
it.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
Okay, well, I mentioned this on Thursday, but I would just like to reiterate extending condolences to the family members of Mary Elizabeth Smith. I had the great honor of going to school with her parents and was principal at her school when she was a student there. And I'll just say she was beautiful inside and out, truly a beautiful child, and very, very highly talented. And I think it's worth mentioning that both her parents and several other family members retired from the Okaloosa County School District. And so that's certainly a loss for the community and for the family and friends of Mary Elizabeth. And I will also extend condolences to the family of Colton Ward from Destin Middle School. So I think it's worth mentioning those and letting people know that our thoughts and prayers are with those families. The last thing, I would like to mention that on this Wednesday, October the 28th, FASA, Florida Association for School Administrators, is holding a forum called Equity and Diversity in Our Schools. And their lead speaker is Dr. Howard Stevenson of the University of Pennsylvania, noted for equity and diversity speaking. And he has the first half of that day. You can watch the webinar. But the second half of that day, this is the point I think is worth mentioning, is that they're having a roundtable with 3 principals from across the state, Mr. Joe Burgess from Childs High School in Leon County, Dr. Contessa Bryant from New World School of the Arts in Miami-Dade County, and Mr. John Spolsky of Fort Walton Beach High School in our own county. So I think that was worthy of a mention. So congratulations for Mr. Spolsky representing us at that forum of FASA this Wednesday.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Dr. White?
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Well, first of all, congratulations to Dr. Kelly.
Thank you.
And that's a wonderful award. And the last thing that I'd like to say is to encourage the citizens to please vote. The children of Okaloosa County need you. Thank you, Mr. Bryant.
Thank you, Dr. White. And Mr. Destin?
Thank you, Chairman. As you all recall, meeting before this one, I think, we had a book that had been discussed at the public meeting, and I wanted to report that Superintendent Chambers has reported to me that the book is going through the proper process and that it is being reviewed, and I want to thank him for making sure that that went forward in a transparent manner. And I did read the book, and I'm going to give it to Jan, so if any of you all want to see what the book was about, it's an interesting read, and I will leave it at the school board office. And I just want to thank again to make sure that we all understand that it is going through the process at this time.
All right.
That's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. And my final comments are, we do have a board member who celebrated a birthday yesterday.
Oh, we did.
So Ms. Ivanchek turned 29 or something.
That's right.
29-ish or
She
something.
told me 25.
Youngest elected one, right?
So
There you
so
go.
happy birthday to Ms. Ivanchek.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And just a note that I was at Baker's homecoming the other night for their parade and their football game. And Mr. Chambers, I wanted to report that it was a great event. The community of Baker rallied behind the Gators and the school and had a very well planned out parade, and everybody seemed to have a great time. And at the football game, Ms. Ivanchek, I'll let you know, they were kind of slow at the beginning of the
Yeah, I saw
first couple of
that.
quarters,
I
but then they
watched that.
really put it on to the last third and fourth
Yep,
quarter.
they
So
did.
Baker ended up winning that game, I believe, 35-6. So
Yep.
with that, okay, so we are down to the second public comment section, and do we have anybody that would like to speak before the board? All right. With that being said, this meeting's adjourned.
Good job. Thank you.
Good job.